The sun rises over the vast grasslands of Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. In that quiet moment, a lonely old male lion lets out a roar. Once, he had been the leader of a mighty pride. But as the years went by, his health slowly declined. The majestic king had become frail, his once glorious mane now ragged and thin. One morning, the young lions began to grow more aggressive. They challenged his leadership and, in time, took over the pride. They attacked him, tearing into his skin and biting at his legs. He fought back the best he could, but his strength was fading. Blood oozed from deep wounds. Eventually, he couldn't go on any longer and was chased out of the pride's territory. Step by painful step, he limped toward the edge of the national park, a place he had never been before. Every movement sent pain shooting through his injured leg. Worse than the pain was the hunger, gnawing at his stomach. In this condition, hunting was impossible. His mind started to fog. All he could see was the dry grass, baking under the brutal sun. Thirst, hunger, bleeding wounds. They drained every ounce of his energy. The old lion kept walking, dragging himself along the park's border, heading toward a sparsely populated area. A quiet place where a few people lived in simple wooden houses. One of those people was Mrs. Farida, an elderly woman. She had once worked in Hwange, and after retiring, she chose to stay close to the wild animals she loved. She wanted her retirement to be peaceful and connected to nature. One evening, just as the sun was setting, she heard a weak roar outside her wooden home. Curious, she gently opened the door and froze. Standing there was a large old male lion. The sight made her shiver. He looked both terrifying and heart-wrenchingly pitiful, his body covered in open wounds. The lion let out a low growl, but it was soft. There was no threat in his voice, just weakness. To Mrs. Farida, it sounded like he was crying for help. He was covered in dirt, and the wound on his leg looked swollen and infected. Despite the fear curling in her chest, she slowly backed into the house and grabbed her old first aid kit. She knew the risks. If the lion suddenly turned aggressive, she might not survive. But her instincts and her compassion told her she had to do something. So she returned to the porch, heart pounding, and slowly approached the lion as he lay there, barely able to move. He tilted his head to one side. He didn't have the strength to lift it. Carefully, she began cleaning the wounds on his neck and back. She could see deep bite marks, raw and painful. Softly, she whispered, "Don't be afraid, I will help you." Tension filled her entire body, but years of working with animals had taught her how to stay calm under pressure. The worst wound was the one on his leg. It had dried blood crusted over it. With warm water and antiseptic solution, she gently cleaned it. The lion groaned in pain but didn't move. He just lay there, accepting it. He wasn't aggressive, just exhausted. That gave her the courage to keep going. Slowly and carefully, she wrapped a clean bandage around his leg. While she worked, she kept glancing into his half-closed eyes, alert for any sudden change. When she finally finished, she took a deep breath and stood up. Her hands and feet were shaking with adrenaline and emotion. She stepped back into the house and called the Hwange conservation team to report what had happened. The team was surprised. An old male lion showing up in a residential area was unheard of, but they promised to come quickly and bring the necessary equipment. While waiting, Mrs. Farida stayed on alert, worried that other wild animals might wander. Near the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky orange. The old lion, now quiet and still, was silhouetted against the soft glow outside her wooden home. She looked at him, heart full of sympathy. This creature had once ruled the plains, and now he lay helpless at the doorstep of humankind. About 30 minutes later, a conservation vehicle pulled up, its headlights cutting through the dusk. The team stepped out carrying a tranquilizer gun and a large iron cage. Just then, the lion stirred. He opened his eyes and tried to raise his head, startled by the sudden light. Though his leg was bandaged, he was still far too weak to react. A staff member aimed and fired the tranquilizer dart, hitting the lion with precision. He struggled, faintly, then slowly drifted into unconsciousness. "Success," one of them called out, and they quickly moved him into the protective cage. Mrs. Farida walked over slowly, touched the iron bars, and looked in at the lion now lying motionless. She had only known him for a few minutes, but somehow she already felt attached. Maybe it was the connection of age, or maybe it was something deeper. Just as they were about to leave, the lion's eyes fluttered open once more. He looked at her as if to say, "Thank you." She smiled, gave him a gentle nod. The conservation team reassured her. They would take him to the veterinary station in a protected area where he could heal safely. She nodded and watched the vehicle roll away into the night, the cage, and the lion inside. It all felt like a dream. She went back into her house quietly and finally exhaled. The next day, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Would he survive? Would he make it? Days passed slowly. After a week, she couldn't wait any longer. She decided to visit Huanga herself. She got into her old car and drove to the park gate, familiar ground she had once called home. The staff saw her approaching and immediately recognized her. They greeted her warmly and led her to the safe zone where the lion was being kept. It was a secure space, large enough for the old lion to rest, recover, and be well cared for. Her heart beat fast as they walked. How was his leg? Had he healed? And then, there he was. Standing beside the steel fence, the lion looked stronger, healthier. She couldn't help but smile. He had survived. The moment it saw her, the lion recognized her right away. It let out a soft, happy growl and slowly moved closer. The bandage on its leg had been changed, fresh and clean now, and the old scars were starting to heal. Mrs. Farida gently slipped her hand through the fence, tenderly stroking the fur on its leg. The old lion didn't pull away. Instead, it stretched its body ever so slightly, as if responding to her touch. A conservation worker nearby spoke up. "We've been monitoring it for the past week. Its health has improved quite well." Mrs. Farida smiled softly, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. She was glad, deeply glad, that she had found it in time to make a difference. The worker continued, "This lion probably can't return. To the pride. We'll take care of it for the rest of its life." Her eyes softened at those words, touched by the kindness, and quietly accepting the harsh truth of nature. The old lion looked up at her with cloudy, aging eyes, as if it understood the conversation without a word being said. She reached out again, brushing her fingers gently through its shaggy mane. "I'm old," she said quietly. "It's good to be at ease here." The lion let out another soft groan, as if in agreement with the one who had saved him. And just like that, Mrs. Farida's mind drifted back to the night they first met. To the way he had looked then, barely able to stand, his body failing him. If she hadn't helped that night, he would have died there, alone, just outside her door, under the cover of darkness. But now, he was safe. He had food, medicine, and a place where he could rest and recover. Mrs. Farida felt a quiet joy knowing she'd helped a life that had been so close to the end, not fade away in pain and loneliness. She turned then, her heart full, and thanked the conservationists who had worked so hard to save and care for the lion. She thought that despite her old age, she still had the same love for animals as before. The lion blinked at her, letting out a peaceful sigh. She put her hand on her heart, returning that look with a rare warmth in her old age. Then she said goodbye, promising to visit often, bringing some of its favorite food. Stepping out of the safe area, Mrs. Farida smiled peacefully, believing that the last days of the old king would be more peaceful in a place where it was still cherished and cared for. Dear friend, thank you for taking the time to follow the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support us.